Okay, I received a question about the sensibility of the implied author, and that it accounts for the narrative in the sense that the implied authorial views that we find emerging in the narrative are consistent with the elements of the narrative discourse that we are aware of. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, we need to break it apart. And one is the part that's in italics, which means it slants. It says, are consistent with the elements of the narrative discourse that we are aware of. Narrative discourse, what does that mean? And it means the way the story is being told, what the elements in the way the story is being told. So what kind of information is being transmitted by the way the story is told? So do we hear irony in the voice? Are the words that are used being relatively value-free, or are they loaded with different social and cultural meanings? So that's what we're interested in. And so when we're thinking about what does the author feel about this, what does the author think about this, that's what we're thinking. We're not able to know, we're not really able to access their actual mind, and so that's why we talk about the implied author instead. We think that this is what the author probably was thinking, and that this is probably what the author wants to say, and this is what they're trying to communicate. And so when we say that we want the implied author's views in the narrative to be consistent with what we actually see in the narrative. So if we are saying that the author probably wants to do this, the author probably means this, then we have to be able to show what is it in the text that makes us think that. And so this is what Abbott means. He says the sensibility of, if we take out implied, I think it might become clearer. The sensibility of the author, what the author feels, wants, desires us to think, feel, want, accounts for the narrative in the sense that the authorial views, or the author's views that we find emerging in the narrative, the views that we find in the narrative, the things that we see in the narrative, are consistent with the elements of the narrative that we can see. It's so what would be a simpler way of saying that is that when we talk about the implied author, we have to make sure that what we are attributing to the author, or the implied author in this case, is consistent with the elements that we can actually find in the story. So that we can say, well, when he uses the word supposedly, this is what the character X wants. Well, the word supposedly suggests that the narrator doesn't really believe this is what the character wants. And if the narrator then can be said to represent the author or the implied author, then we're able to say that. So hope that explanation works. It's a bit long-winded.